Okay guys, this is Mr. Urrego, and today we're going to factor quadratic expressions using a greatest common factor. First thing that we're going to do is, we have three numbers here, 30, 40, and 20. The idea is to find the greatest common factor between the three numbers. To do that, the first thing I need to do is break up the number. Okay, so I'm going to break the 30, the 40, and the 20. Now breaking up meaning two numbers that you multiply and you get you get 30. Okay, so let's try that again. So 30 will be, the first number will be 30. Okay, it's not working right now. So my first one would be 30 and 1, could be 15 and 2, 10 and 3, what else? 6 times 5, 30, right? Now let's do the same thing with the 40. So the 40, two numbers are 40 times 1, this is a 0, 20 times 2, 10 times 4, 8 times 5, right? I think that's it. 20. Always I'm going to start with the same number times 1. All right, that's the first one. 10 times 2, 5 times 4. Okay, so I factored all those numbers under possible factors. Again, I'm sorry to repeat that again. Now we're doing the greatest common factor, so which means I'm looking for the, out of the common factors. Common factor means you have the one here as a factor, you have the one here as a factor, you have one here as a factor. So that's a common factor. It's everywhere. Okay, the 30 has it, the 40 has it, the 20 has it. So this is a common factor. The 2 is also a common factor. Okay, the 2 is here, the 2 is here, and the 2 is there. So it's a factor of the three numbers. So far, the greatest is the 2 because it's bigger than 1. So greatest is the higher number. Now let's see if there's anything else. 36 times 5. So far the 2 is my greatest common factor. Let's see if there's any other common factor. Again, common factor is something that is in here as a factor, that is also part of the 40, and it is also part of the 20. Any of those factors. So let's keep going. I see that I have a 5 in here. Let's see if I have a 5 under the 40, and I have a, oh, that's a 4. And I have a 5 under the 20. So 5 is a common factor, and it's also the biggest number out of all of them. So that means that my greatest common factor, my GCF, for this set of numbers is 5. Okay, so that's the idea with greatest common factor. If instead of numbers I have variables, okay, so it works differently. The first thing that I need to do is I need to see if it's common. Okay, to see if it's common, I need to know how many terms I have in this expression. Right now in this expression, the whole thing, I have 2 terms. How do we know how many terms? Because the terms are separated by a plus or by a minus. In this case, I have 1 minus, meaning I have 2 terms. So every plus or minus separate the terms. Right now I only have 1 minus, so I have 2 terms. That's the main idea right now. Now, out of those 2 terms, I need to find out what's common. So here we go, let me see. The first term has an x. Do I have an x in the second term? Yes. So because the x is common, I bring it over here, and I have to choose the x with the lowest exponent. Right now, my first x has a 3. My second x, if there's no exponent right there, you have a 1. You should have a 1 right there. Okay, so if there's no exponent, you have a 1. So that's your common factor there, the x. Now, let's see if the y is common. Okay, let's see if the y is common. Okay, so I noticed that I have a y here and I have a y right there. So the y is common. I choose the one with the lowest exponent. Between the 2 and the 5, the 2 is the lowest one. So my GCF will be x, y to the second. But I need to finish now. I need to finish. So after this, I have to open a parenthesis. Because, you know what, I'm going to make I want to stop right there and explain something before. To make it easier, I need to change something which is I guess is required. So let's say that I have a 2, let's say that I have a 2x, parenthesis, 3x minus 4, okay? So I have 2x times 3x minus 4. Right now, you notice I'm multiplying. So I gotta multiply 2x times 3x, which is gonna give me 6x to the second power, and I have to multiply 2x times negative 4, which is gonna give me negative 8x. Okay, the reason I went back is because when I'm factoring, I'm going backwards. If I go from here to here, I'm factoring. If I go from here to the answer, I'm multiplying. Okay, so technically, when we are doing a GCF, I'm undoing a distributive property. If you notice, I distribute the 2x times the 3x and the times negative 4, and I got this answer. Okay, if I give you this answer and ask you factor, I have to do GCF first of all. So again, factoring and multiplication is the opposite to each other. Okay, so now the reason I went back to this is, so if you have here in the bottom, if you have x cubed y squared minus xy fifth, now again we're factoring, so I'm doing a distributive property. So the first thing I do is I find my GCF. Between the x's is the x to the first, between the y's is y to the second, and now I open a parenthesis. The next step is take each term and divide it by my greatest common factor. So again, I gotta take my each term and divide it by my common factor. My first term is the x y to the third power. So I'm going to grab x, y to the third power. I'm going to put it on one side, and let me write it here. Here we go. X cubed y squared. And I need to divide it by my common factor, which is x, y to the second. Whatever answer you have, you're going to place it inside the parentheses. Okay? So let's find that out. I have x. I do the x's first. X cubed divided by x to the second. Remember, if the x on the bottom doesn't have an exponent, it's a 1. When you're dividing two powers, you keep the same base, which is the x, and you subtract the exponents. 3 minus 1 gives you 2. That's how you divide powers. Now let's do the y's. I have y to the second divided by y to the second. If they have the same exponent, same variable, they cancel each other. Okay, so my answer for the first division is x squared, which is going to come as the first term. Here, minus xy to the fifth, so minus, and now let's do xy to the fifth divided by my common factor, which is xy to the second. Same thing. Let's divide the x's first. X divided by x. Same variable, same exponent, they cross it out. They cancel each other. Let's do the y's. Y to the fifth divided by y to the second. They have different exponents, so I bring the y, and now I subtract. 5 minus 2 gives me 3. So that's my answer for the second term. Y to the third power, and now because I already used my two terms, and I got two terms inside, I'm done with that GCF. So that's kind of the basic idea for greatest common factor. Let me do another one. Number 2, I have 6x fifth y to the seventh plus 10x squared y to the fifth. First thing is, how many terms I have? I see 1 plus right here. I see 1 plus right there, so that means I have 2 terms. Remember, the plus or minus divides the number of terms. So I have 2 terms. Okay. Next, I need to start doing, if I have coefficients, meaning if I have numbers in front of the variables, that's the first thing that I need to do. I need to find what's my greatest common factor between the 6 and the 10. To do that, I have to break the 6 and 1, 3 and 2, the 10 and 1, 5 and 2. Okay, this is a 0, by the way. Now, greatest common factor. You will always have the 1. Always. Okay? But that's not that's not your common factor. You want to have a factor other than 1. In my case, I see that I have a 2 here and I have a 2 there. So right now, that's my greatest common factor so far. I want to check if there's anything bigger than that. A 3 is here, but it's not on the other side. A 6 is here, but it's not on the other side. I have a 5 here, but it's not on the other side. So nothing else is common. So my greatest common factor is a 2. So I'll bring a 2 over here. Now x. Is the x a common factor? Yes. X to the 5th, x to the 2nd. I choose the one with the lowest exponent, x to the 2nd. The y. Y to the 7th, y to the 5th. I choose the y with the lowest exponent, y to the 5th. Now I'm ready to open my parentheses. So I open my parentheses and I take my first term, 6 x to the 5th, y to the 7th, divided by my common factor, which is x squared, y to the 5th. 6 divided by 2 is 3. X to the 5th divided by x to the 2nd is x. 5 minus 2 is 3. Now let's look at the y's. Y to the 7th divided by y to the 5th. Y. I'm sorry. I should have changed that before. Erase that y. I don't like it like that. Done. And green again. So y to the 7 divided by y to the 5th. Y, 7 minus 5 is 2. So that's the answer for the first term. 3x squared y, 3x cubed. 3x cubed y to the 2nd power. Okay, now I get the same thing with the second one. So plus 10x, let's do it right here on the side. 10x squared y 5th divided by my common factor, 2x squared y 5th. Okay, so 10 divided by 2 is 5. X squared, cancel out. Y to the 5th, cancel out. So my answer is 5. So I'm going to bring that 5 next to it. Close my parentheses, and I'm done with number 2. Let's stretch this out and let's do another one. Bigger, longer, more numbers, more variables. It doesn't matter, guys. The process is the same. Okay, so let's get to it. Let's break the numbers first. 12. We know there's going to be 12 and 1. Well, basically the first thing is this. If you, by any chance, you have a small number that fits into the other ones, let's say you have a 3 right here instead of the 9, okay? You know what? Let's change that problem. Let's change it into that. Hold on. All right, so we just changed the number. It doesn't make more sense. Every time you're factoring, you start with GCF, greatest common factor. You look at the numbers. Okay, so I have a 12 here, I have a 3, and I have a 15. Look at the smallest number, the 3. See if the 3 goes into the 12, and if the 3 goes into the 15. If that's the case, then the 3 is the common factor. Okay, so check the smallest number. If that goes into the other two numbers, then that number will be a common factor. If not, you break it the same way that we did in the previous two problems. Okay, I'm just going to show you a shortcut right there. Now next, x. You know, by the way, I'm going to do this on the bottom. So my 3 is the common factor. Okay, so now the x. Is the x a common factor? Let's see, x is here, x is there, x is there. So my x is a common factor. Lowest exponent, 6, 7, or 9? 6. Let's check the y's. Let's check the y's. Y is here, and y is there. So y is a common factor. 3, or 5? 3 is the lowest one. All right, next. Z. I got z here, but I don't have z at the end. There's nothing here, so that means the z is not a common factor because there's nothing on the last term. Okay? Be careful with that. So z is not a common factor, therefore I don't write anything there. I just need to put my parentheses and I start dividing. Okay, now let's do this faster. Hopefully we're good by now. So 12, I'm going to take my first term divided by my common factor. So 12 divided by 3, 4. X to the 6 divided by x to the 6, cancel out. Y to the third divided by y to the third, cancel out. Because there's only the z to the 12 left, then I write z to the 12. Next term, plus. Second term, I'm doing the second term. 3x7 y third z9 divided by your common factor. Same process that we did up there. So 3 divided by 3, cancel out. X to the 7 divided by x to the 6, x to the first. Y third divided by y third, they cancel out. Z to the 9th, that's the number that is left. So you bring it down. And that looks horrible. Okay, z to the 9th. Last term, let's use blue for that. You got minus 15x9y, so minus 15 divided by 3, 5. x9 divided by x to the 6, 9 minus 6, 3. Y to the 5th divided by y to the 3rd, y to the 2nd. And that should be your answer. Okay? Alright guys, study please. Take care. Something that I forgot to say, you know, and hope maybe we should do, just in case you're not sure about the process itself, and this is your right answer, what you should do, multiply back. Okay, I couldn't finish without saying that. So if you're not sure about it, now technically this is your answer. You're done over here, that's your answer. But if you're not sure about it, let's multiply back. Okay, what I mean by multiply back is you take the first, you take the common factor, all this, times the first term. So 3 times 4, 12. I'm going to change that to a different because it's not going to work out. Okay, so let me do blue. So 3a times 4, 12. X to the 6 times, there's no x here, so it's x to the 6. Y to the third, and there's no y here, so it's y to the third. And the last thing that I have is z to the 12, so I've got to bring my z to the 12. Next, that times the second term. Okay, so you got 3 times 1 that it should be here, so that's a 3. X to the 6 times x to the first, x to the 7th. Y to the third times, there's no y there, so you got to bring the y to the third. And you got a z that is left, so you got to bring down the z to the 9th. The last thing is your number on the outside times the third term. So 3 times negative 5, negative 15. X to the 6 times x to the third, x to the 9th. Y to the third times y to the second, y to the 5th. We double check that answer with the original problem, and we notice that it's the same thing. Therefore, what we just did is right. So how do we double check if you factor correctly? Multiply back and you should get the same answer. Okay? Take care, guys. Bye.